I drank pots and pots and pots and pots of strong black coffee, trying to keep my sleepy soul awake. But the sleepiness still comes along, and when it does, it's fast and strong. I end up with a bad case of the shakes.
Good morning and welcome to Coffee Talk with Guido. I've got my coffee. You can see it's the standard kid Christmas coffee mug. Those are 2 pieces of bacon on the beach frying up. So fantastic artwork. Let's get started to Coffee Talk. Actually, one more thing. I'm drinking Dark Magic. Yeah, I know it's a Keurig, but pretty good. Green Mountain Dark Magic. Not bad for a Keurig kind of coffee. What do we got on the docket today? The big news is 9.20 is out. We're going to talk about the patch notes, get into detail on those finally. We'll have a little section on the missions, what's going on currently in the game. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A with Victor Kisili, which is always entertaining. Let's get started. Okay, what is new with patch 9.20? This one has a bunch of changes, so a lot going on. We will just start from the top and roll through these things. Big rebalancing, that will be the bulk of what we talk about in there. We have SPG improvements. The big one to note there is you can no longer be splashed through things. So I believe it is 2 meters, here it is, 2 or more meters thick, you should not be splashed. Realize that if a piece of your tank is sticking out somewhere, then you can be splashed, and that will be a percentage, all right, a kind of prorated damage depending on how much of your tank is sticking out. But no more getting blasted through walls as long as they're thick enough. I believe some of the smaller destructible buildings will you'll still catch some of the damage on that. So that is a good change. There's a couple other SPG things we'll talk about. Chinese TDs are obviously added to the game. That's a big deal. I am up to tier 7. More to come on that. I will be doing a review from tier 5 through 10 on those TDs, and they're okay. Not too bad. Grand Battles. So Grand Battles was added. That is a 30v30. Tier 10 only, and it is kind of like Encounter and Assault. You can turn it on and off. You need 60 tier 10s in the queue for this to happen, and it's 10% of the time it's supposed to hit. You do the math. More than likely, you're going to have a very difficult time seeing it on the North American server unless it is prime time and somewhere in the 20,000 range. Some people have reported seeing it. A lot of people haven't seen it. I've played 15, 20 tier 10 battles, but I tend to play during the day, earlier in the morning, and so I am just not seeing enough people in queue. I cannot talk about how it plays, but we can talk about what it says obviously here in the patch notes. Some interesting things to note. Bonds, and we'll get to that on the grand battles. Bonds can be earned in tier 10 battles and randoms. Okay, so bonds can be earned in tier 10 battles during randoms, and I've picked up some bonds along there, somewhere between 8 to 12 a battle, depending on how it goes. Maybe a little bit less than that. It's going to take you a while to build up enough bonds to buy the improved equipment, but it is now available to you. You don't have to just do ranked battles in order to get bonds. I think that's a good change. German vehicle changes. The 168.01 was added. That's in Super Test. Doesn't affect most of us. The Mao's got a nerf to the reload from 12 to 13.3, and it got less hit points from 3,200 down to 3,000. Armor wasn't touched, so not really a big nerf. The 8.8, which is the tier 8 German TD, decreased dispersion during movement and hull traverse, and got a buff to its hull traverse speed from 22 degrees to 26 degrees, because we all know that TDs in channelized maps need to turn faster, right? China had the addition of their TD line. I will have a review of the tier 7, actually tier 5 to tier 10. Look for those in the near future. Jumping into the USSR, the lightweight T-44 version was added to Super Test. Doesn't affect most of us. All right, and we're getting now into the generalized buff. What you are going to find for most of these buffs as I talk about them, medium turrets are going to be buffed, and a lot of the gun stats are going to be buffed, with a couple small exceptions. Starting with the T-54, You can see that dispersions are decreased, and I'm not going to go through these all. I'll just try to pick out the most important ones. You'll see that the aiming time went from 2.4 to 2.2. That is a similar buff that's coming, I believe, to the Type 59, not in this obvious patch 9.20, but in the future. View range was changed, actually increased. That's one of the few tanks that got that kind of buff. Improved turret armor, again, across the board for most mediums, you are getting turret armor improvements. And this goes back to my claim that, hey, they're starting to use gold ammo as the baseline for balancing pen to armor. So you're going to end up being a little bit better as a turret fighter. The T-44 was notoriously bad at that. The turret was butter, everything went through it. I don't think this is going to make it impervious, but it will make it a little bit better. And then everyone will just press 2, and off we go. It got a depression buff from -6 to -7. That's good. T-44-100 had similar things happen to it. Faster reloads, faster aiming time. The 100P, which is another version of that same tank. T-103, I think, is a test tank. I don't recognize it. The T-44, then, more buffs across the board right here. That's the T-44-100. Oh, that was the first prototype. I started talking about the T-44, but here's all the buffs for it as well. So not only did the prototype, the premium one, get a buff, the regular T-44, the one off of the standard line. And you'll see that the reload time from 8.1 to 7.5, that's pretty significant. I thought the interesting one here, though, is this 122, this line right here. The 122 is that big 390 Alpha gun that the T-34-3 carries, that Chinese premium tank. It does 390 Alpha. That was always available on the T-44, but the reload and aiming and whatnot was so bad on it, nobody carried it. If you find the reload here, it's actually on this one, is going from 19.2 to 15.2, and that may make that gun a little bit more viable on the T-44. You might see some of those big sticks running around. I saw it every once in a while, but not very often. Some penetration changes on ammo that I won't go through. The T-54 had something interesting happen. The guns got moved around a little bit as far as the capability of the guns. The two main ones people used were the D-54 and the T-10-2S. T-10T-2S. So the dispersion of the 10-2S changed from 0.39 to 0.35 to 0.39. That's worse. So its dispersion got worse. Whereas the D-54 went from 3.9 to 3.3. It got better. Interesting. So they kind of swapped roles right there as far as that goes. The reload time for the T-2S went 7.8 to 7.4. Whereas the reload time for the D-54 got worse from 8.2 to 8.5. This is one of the few instances where a gun actually got worse. And then the same thing kind of happens to the aiming time. It gets worse or better. This is fairly significant. A 2.9 down to a 2 second. That's quite the change for the D-54. You're going to see this in a lot of them. Improved hull and turret armor. There's no details of that. You're going to have to dig into other places to find that out. We won't dive into that. I talked about it a little bit in other coffee talks. In general, it's turret armor that's getting the buff, although this one got a little bit of hull as well on the T-54. Some more penetration changes, and the depression from -5 to -6 for the 10T-2S, which is interesting. That's helpful. The IS-7, which in the past was a fantastic tank, and in the recent past has been pretty anemic as a Tier 10 heavy tank, got a couple important buffs. Down here, extra hit points. A slight bummer, because actually it was one of the lower hit point heavies, and for the bounce missions that made it a little bit easier sometimes to bounce. But it got a little buff to hit points. I think we'll all take that. The aiming time for the gun went from 3.1 to 2.9. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it should be pretty decent. And then some stat changes, dispersion buffs. Anytime you're decreasing the dispersion by percentages, 16, 16, 25, that's helping out the gun right there. The ISU lost the BL-10, that's gone. I will tell you that this not the 152, I think it's the 122 25S. Anyway, whichever one is now the big gun that is not the BL-10. It lost a little bit of penetration from the BL-10, somewhere like 9, I think. It's essentially the same gun. People are having a cow about it. A little bit worse gun. I don't know why it was changed. It's not like anyone thought at all that the ISU 152 was running around dominating the whole game. So again, I don't know why they changed that, but they did. Durability went up. You got a few more hit points. There's some changes in the research costs. Interesting that the getting to the object 704 from 176 to 192, okay, or getting to the object 704 went up. The 704 added the big dirt gun, so you've got that D4S guy right there, and then changed the research cost of the next vehicle 268 from 301 to 239, so it dropped down right there. The 268 got more left to right degrees up to 11 because that was the problem with the 268. That was not the problem with the 268. This actually was one of the problems with the 268. The shell velocity was pretty slow, so it was very difficult to hit moving targets with this tank, so they fixed that a little bit, and now it has a faster shell velocity, and the 140 got some turret armor. Slight correction to that last because I'm too lazy to go back and re-record the whole thing. I keep calling the 152 D4S a derp gun. That's not true. That's the big replacement for the BL10. Same thing here down at the 704. That's just the big old 750 Alpha replacement for what was the BL10, although the 704 is still running a BL10 as well. And also the penetration change from the BL10 down to that new gun is considerably more than 9. USA, USA. All right, the Pattons both got improved turret armor. I will tell you that I ran into this tier 10 version in my low probably yesterday. I never really had trouble pinning the turret, even with the AP of the low, and I bounced the snot out of that turret. So that was definitely a 2 situation, and once I pressed 2, I still bounced a few. It's a very curved turret, especially up towards the top, but I will tell you that that buff has helped out those tanks in their kind of ridge fighting and turret poking capability right there. Bit of changes with the shells and whatnot, and then the research went much higher for the M48A1. France. All right, these are big changes here, and there's a lot of moving parts. Essentially, the tier 8, 9, and 10 got autoloaders, which is a version of the 120, I believe, 120 millimeter. And some of the other tanks got various buffs. So we'll get to the TDs in just a second. The 5100, I think the most important thing here is -6 to -9 degrees. So now the 5100 can do a little bit of ridge fighting as well. The new Lorraine medium tank, at least the 3rd iteration of it, has some pretty good depression. Now the 5100 kind of equals that. And the tanks above it are decent depression-wise as well. Some changes to the ammo layout for the 1375 and the Batchat 25T and the 25T AP. Those are to the 100 millimeters in the case of the tier 9 and 10. Most people run, at least on the tier 10, the 105, so it shouldn't be a huge deal, but extra ammo is always nice. 12 is quite a bit, actually. Now we get into the TDs. The 8, 9, and 10 are autoloaders, and they will have been changed around. So if you own those, make sure you get into your garage and figure out your ammo and everything else that has changed around on that. Also, the aiming time was better on the 48 from 2.9 to 2.7. And then we've got a change in ammo capacity, which I assume is to make it work mathematically for the clips, since you load clips at a time. Those tanks will carry a full load of whatever X number of clips they can have. The 50 Foch, which is the tier 9, has been changed around. It's got the autoloader, as I mentioned. Dispersions have changed a bit, making it better as far as that goes. However, the aim time has gone from 2.3 to 2.5. So while the dispersion, i.e. the size of the circle, is a little bit smaller, the time it takes to aim is a little bit more. When you get into the improved hull armor, I mentioned this earlier, you got to kind of look at exactly what they're talking about. I believe that is only the side armor. I don't remember if the front of the tank was improved. If it was, it wasn't by much, but potentially a little bit. Again, a little bit of the ammo thing. All right, the 50B and the 155. If you own the 155, you have the 50B essentially for free. The paint and equipment and everything was moved over to that insofar as it could be, because you can't have a rammer on an autoloader. So you need to take a look at what your situation is there. You will still have the 155 in your garage. And the good news there is, while it's not a premium in that it makes extra experience and credits, it's a premium in that I believe any crew, any French TD crew can work in it. So that's good. You don't have to go out and train yourself a 155 crew if you're loving on the 155. The AMX-30 prototype and the AMX-30B both got considerable buffs to the turret and to the gun handling. So the guns should be a little more comfortable. They're always kind of derpy, so they should be a little bit better. This decreased dispersion during traverse and whatnot. Look at this, 40% change, 30% change from 3.4 to 3.8. And that's actually going in the wrong direction right there. So the circle's a little bit bigger. But the losses you get while it moves and spins a turret around are quite a bit less. The reload time from 9.9 to 8.7 and 10.2 to 9 seconds for the guns on the two different tanks is, wow, pretty nice. Pretty nice. And the 50B has a lot of the similar things, an 8.9 to a 7.8 second. That's very good on the reload. So anytime you can reload faster is always good, especially on a medium. That's going to make it, I wouldn't say it's necessarily competitive to the Russian hover tanks as far as how fast they spit the shells down range, but it's going to help it quite a bit. Get down to what I talked about on the 155 and what happens to your 155 in the garage. Just read through that if you really want to know the details. It's pretty self-evident when you get in there and look at it. I just want to cut off at the knees the whole, holy cow, you stole my crew. That there was a couple posts about that. I want my 155 crew back, blah, blah, blah. All right, dude, noted. It's in your 50B and it still can run in your 155. Don't worry about it. For Nippon, for Japan, lots of changes. The 01 Experimental lost that great big stupid gun. What was it, a 105 version? So it's removed the 10 centimeter. That thing was just nuking everything at tier 5. That's gone. It's been slowed down and armored up, so it's closer to fighting like an 01 at this point. There's the speed from 40 to 25. That is considerable, and increased armor. The 01 decreased thickness of hull and turret armor. That's the back, not the front or the sides. I'm pretty sure that's just the back on that one. The OHO, holy cow, it got slowed down from 40 to 25. That is extra painful. The OHO's speed was actually kind of nice. Not really sure why they slowed it down. They increased the armor of the hull and turret, so that actually the OHO got a armor buff. The traverse speed went from 22 to 20. You're going to find this on the OHO, the Type 4, and the Type 5, that they don't spin in place as fast as they used to. Apparently some of the lights and mediums were having trouble circle strafing these guys, and they were able to spin too fast. So I don't know why they think that's going to do anything to balance these things, because that's not the problem with these guys. We'll get to that in just a second. And that second is now, because now we get to the Type 4 and the Type 5, and that is where, and the Type 4 is not mentioned, but right here on the Type 5, decrease the thickness of the hull armor. That is those two little weak spots that are now on the front, and I'm not even going to call them weak spots anymore. They're slightly less strong spots. They lost like 10, 20 millimeters of armor on those little spots. So you've got to aim for them. You're still going to have to press 2 to make that happen, but at least there's a slight weak spot on the front of those things, I suppose you would call it. And then these are the degrees of suspension nerfs on traverse speed for various things on the turret and for the suspension. So basically spinning around and moving your turret is going to be a little bit harder to do in the Type 5 and Type 4. All right, there were a lot of changes to the ranked battles that I'm not going to really dive into. I will say that you can now do marks of excellence and mastery badges in ranked battles. That was a problem before. There's a max of 2 SPGs per team. People were failing to the top in SPGs. There's a lot of little changes on how things are displayed and what you can see. It says there's special hints to explain basic mechanics, because tier 10 and tier stuff should have special hints. I don't understand that. Displays, there's a change to improved equipment. They can now be demounted with bonds, so that's not bad. I did not realize this, but when 9.20 came out, everybody's special equipment or improved equipment was automatically demounted for free, so you could re-wicker it and put it where you wanted. All right, so now we get down to the artillery, where the change in the crew stun mechanic has happened. They've changed the amount of time, or so they've added the time of stun you've caused in the battle results screen. But more importantly, this whole idea of being blasted through permanent or unbreakable terrain like walls and rocks is gone. So if it's 2 or more meters, as it says right here, thick, then you'll be fully covered. No more being blasted behind rocks, unless you have a portion of your tank sticking out. So still, if you've got a rock and your tank's here, and right here, and somebody drops a shot over here and it blasts you, it'll still get to you. So that's not going to block. But if this is the rock in your tank and it hits here and you're fully covered, then it's not going through that rock anymore to get you. That was shown with hands right there. Shoot down my watch. All right. That's the stun thing. So that's good. Also, if a portion of your tank is sticking out, you'll be stunned according to how much of your tank is sticking out. You won't get the full stun. All right. Directives. Some changes on those things. I think the coolest one is you can now auto replace them. It's in here somewhere. There it is, auto resupply. So if you can click on that, kind of like auto resupplying consumables, things like that, it'll automatically resupply them for you. There were some decent fixes in there. The mouse actually had 250 millimeters of bottom armor. I didn't realize that. They changed it back to 20, so that was just a mistake in their modeling right there. Some improvements. Hey, improvements to the contact list that almost never works in North America. So there you go. It's been improved. Some known issues were fixed in here. The one thing I did want to note for you, let me find it here, is this one. The camera can suddenly change its position and trajectory view when the player quickly moves the cursor around the vehicle. So as you're using your mouse, and I'll do this a lot, I zoom out and zoom in, and I'm swinging my turret as well with the mouse. So as your turret's turning, you're zooming in, so you're looking in and coming back out, but you're also turning your turret. Sometimes when you do that, you're turning your turret and you zoom in, if you use the scroll wheel, what'll happen is as it goes, it'll automatically, it'll do like another 30 or 45 degrees and you're looking right into the dirt, or you're looking somewhere not even close to what you meant to do. You meant to zoom in like this. Let me look at the camera. You meant to zoom in like this and it goes whoop, and it's over here. So watch out for that. You may have noticed it already. It kind of depends on what your technique is for using your mouse zooming in and zooming out, but that one's driving me a little bit crazy right there. And that is it for 9.20. And we will move on to what we got going on with missions. All right, we've got a new event here under the events tab. It's Tank Academy Officers Training. So that other one that was going has ended. And you can see you've got the same thing going on with these little pictures, the different missions you can get, small unit, physical fitness, leading by example. This one is clicking on it, complete all conditions in each of 5 battles, be among the top 10 in experience, so that's not that difficult, and then be among the top 1 in experience, and 3,000 experience earned. So I'm assuming you have to be in the top 1, you have to do that enough to get 3,000 experience is what it looks like there. But if you're dropping reserves, if you get in the top 1 of experience and you win the battle, more than likely you're going to be around 3,000, especially at the mid to higher tiers. Combat training is damage caused. You need to damage 3 vehicles and do 3,000 damage, so that's not too hard to do. This one you can see is running from 1 September to 2 October. If you do these, every time you do one of these little stamps, you get this reward right here. You can look at all of this, what it is, and then when you complete it, you've done all these things 25 times, 7, 7, and 7. It comes over here and you get this down here, which is award for heroism. Actually, that's not this one, that's this one here. Kind of difficult to see what's going on, and this gets into their whole thing, how they do this. It drives me absolutely bat crap crazy. All right, so the reward for doing all of them is 10 of these, 15 of these, and in addition 3. So these other things that now wrap down to the bottom because the window comes up. This award for heroism is something else entirely. You get one of the following awards. If you get one of the following awards, it happens to be Top Gun, Invader, High Caliber Defender, and more. There's more. So you highlighted. I mean, are you kidding me? Look at this. All right, so I want to look at award for heroism. I want to know what I need to do. Okay, so I need to receive one of the awards. Top Gun, Invader, okay, so I got to do this. Are you kidding me? So there's the list. And 5 more. Oh my God. Okay. So what do I win? I win these things. And edition 4. Oh, there they are. Now, okay, so maybe if I just click on it, I get all the info I need, right? This is everything I need. So I need to, no, it's not all I need. Look at this giant tab. It's huge, but I can't fit. I just can't fit these other ones on. Oh my God. But at least I was able to get all my little pretty pictures in on this one. No words required for this. Here's something I found out that's kind of funny. Is this going to show it to me? Yeah. The British get pudding and tea. The Americans have, oh no, the Swedes get coffee and cinnamon. I want coffee and cinnamon buns. And then the Russians, they just get extra combat rations. They don't get any sweets or nice coffee. Or, no, sorry. Here's a little bit of extra, what, beef or pork or whatever. That to include the Chinese, they don't get anything nice. They just get a little extra food. Americans get cola, of course, because that's what Americans love, right? And onigiri, that's how you say it. Strong coffee for the French, because they're coffee drinking fellas. We'll give chocolate to the Germans. I don't know why Germans are chocolate, to be quite honest. And then buki, which is like a little sweet roll. So everyone but the Chinese and the Russians, who are proper serious communists, they get all their little sweets and silly stuff, but real fighting men, they're just going to get some extra rations. Anyway, this is going on. This is the kind of thing that you can just play your game and not worry too much about, and you're probably going to trip those things. All right, let's jump over to missions. This continues to be a train wreck. 2 of 6, 4 of 6, 1 of 6, 3 of 6. It makes complete sense to me, right? I'm top to bottom. So that's how I count. Typically, I start with 2. 2, 4, 1, 3. What's next? 9? Actually, it can't be 9 because it only goes to 6. So I expect 5. When 5 shows up, I expect it to be between 5 and 1, I guess. Randomly placed. Oh man, it's so good. Okay, so what is the new one? I'm off track now, man. Here's the new one, I believe. We're right here. Operation Kutzau. Be among the top 3 of your team in experience. And you'll note that that kind of matches the other thing I just talked about that's under the other tab. Over there, it's more experience-based than anything. You can see I've done that. You can do it up to 10 times. If you look over here, I'll try to get it to where you can see it. There we go. I have done 84 out of 150, and I've just been playing the game as per normal. Haven't started yet today on my 10K, 20K, and pretty soon I'll hit the 90, which is the maximum. The tank rewards thing this month is very easy. They've given you ample ability to get to 90. I mean, there's 60 extra points available, so nearly anybody should be able to do that. And that are the missions. Now for the low-hanging fruit. Good old Victor has served us up some more quotes. All right. It's more difficult for wargaming to operate in China as we don't operate the game there directly, and there are several problems. I imagine so, Victor. I'm not scoffing you on that, man. I completely feel right now. Okay, man. We're at a point where all we have to do now is not drop the game, just keep improving. Holy cow, buddy, that is not the point you're at. I mean, that's what you think you're doing, and that's why you are where you are. But anyway, at least in NA, I guess everything's going swimmingly when you've got 600,000 people playing in Russia. You're probably not too worried about it. If something fails and we don't finish something, I try to remain calm about it. Everything is in our hands. There's only one real reaction. Let's try to figure out how or why something failed and get it up and running again. I don't know if that's talking about like the extra type of game modes they're trying to create, as in ranked battles and grand battles and stuff, or if he's actually referring to potentially the chat issues that NA is having, or just a general overall comment. But I mean, that's a good way to go at it right there. I wouldn't say they're necessarily achieving it, but they are certainly trying to. He's defending Slava Makarov as a good mindset experience. The man's a rock. I have a high opinion of him. Good on him. I don't know. It would be nice to know what the questions were, because these are just answers, unfortunately. He says they've got several projects in the works. Can't remember what the one's called, but they've been advertising it, kind of the classic battles, I guess, with Greeks and Romans and things. I can't remember what it's called right now, but I've seen some videos of that. Talks about everybody goes into one room every day and then they try to solve it. Well, that's pretty standard. I don't know what else you would do there. After the success of Tanks in 2010, we didn't immediately go out buying villas, yachts, and go living some raucous lifestyle. I do not believe you. Everybody does that. I don't know why that's an issue potentially. I know a lot of people want to take him to task for that, but why he feels he needs to defend that or not, or deny it when more than likely they did go have a good time, I don't know. Maybe they're feeling some heat in that case. This one was probably the most interesting one of it. And I agree with it, following the industry and delving into it a little bit myself. But clearly, it's not easy to get a hit in the framework of a free-to-play or League of Legends type game. So he's kind of not equating their hit status with League of Legends, although they're both ostensibly free-to-play in MMOs. League of Legends is obviously in a league of its own. But that's one out of all the different free-to-play games that are out there, hundreds if not thousands that are being developed and pushed. Only a few really get to the top. And World of Tanks is pretty damn close to the top. But it's not in the league. Not in the league of Legends, but he admits to that. And then he says 75% of people in the free-to-play will never pay a single dollar. That is interesting. I mean, you are developing something and probably taking a lot of their wants and needs into account when you develop it, and they're not paying a single dime. So 25% of the people pay. And that does get interesting when you get a little bit of that friction between the free players and the pay players and who wants what. And then that's where you start to get into the, hey, pay to win and that kind of thing. I think they've done a pretty good job stiff-arming that for a long time. I believe they're not doing a great job right now. And maybe they're slipping into the pay-to-win regime, especially in the case of new premiums, things like that. But I thought that was an interesting admission right there. And it's not an admission like he didn't believe it. It's just, it's interesting that it's out there in the open. He's talking about it. Let's see, applaud something, player unknown battlegrounds. This is all kinds of just saying he's happy about other games doing well, which is fine. Again, I wish I knew what the questions were on these two, because that would give us a much better context of what the answer is. And I don't know why when they do these Q&A that they don't also give us the questions. And once again, I mention this every time, and I think it's important. This is a translation in English. He probably didn't do this in English. He might have, but I imagine it wasn't, and it's a translation. He's doing there's a shooter coming out called Caliber, Our Attempt at a Shooter. That's an interesting, again, is that a translation? I don't know if I was running a place, I would say, hey, this is our attempt at something. I think I would say, hey, Caliber is our new awesome shooter coming out. And again, maybe it's a translation problem. I just thought that was funny. Yeah, it's our attempt. It's probably going to suck. I did like this, and this piqued my interest. This is something a bit aimed at older players, focusing on special forces. I wonder if that just means it's going to be much more tactical. And that's one of the things I like about World Tanks, because it has a slightly slower pace. It's more about the strategy of it than the twitch skills, although twitch skills do give you an advantage in certain places. I think with tanks, if we didn't discover a new genre in gaming, then a subgenre at least. Again, whatever the question was, I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense just standing alone. Personally, I want a lot of tanks, historical or futuristic. That's interesting. I want to balance skill level as well, which we're currently working on in Belarus. Whoa, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold the phone. He saved the best for last. I want to balance skill as well, which we're currently working on in Belarus. Again, what was the question? When he says historical or futuristic, is this a future game we're talking about? Is this a future for World of Tanks? Some interesting stuff. So I thought that was it was much less illuminating than in several cases left me some serious questions. But that was the last Victor Kisely Q&A. All right, that is it for Coffee Talk for this weekend. Thanks for tuning in as always. Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a couple beers, watch some football or soccer, whatever it is you like. Rugby, I don't care. Tennis, if that's your thing. Enjoy your weekend, like I said, and we will see you.